Okay, what's up, guys? So today I'm going to dissect the article from Yahoo by Beth Greenfield, and it says teens are popping cannabis edibles in middle school. Oh, teens are popping cannabis edibles in the middle of their school day. Here's why and what makes it such risky business. Okay, so let's get into it. So it says, when Naomi's daughter was 14, she had her first encounter with cannabis gummies purchased with the fake ID at one of several unlicensed smoke shops in their New York City neighborhood. The candy she ate contained at least 50 milligrams of the psychoactive compound THC, well above the typical recreational range of 2.5 to 10 milligrams, and it prompted severe vomiting and put her, if only briefly, in a near comatose state. The mother then said, "But I was really happy she'd had that experience because I thought it would make her stay away from drugs forever." Naomi, who asked that her name be changed for privacy reasons, recalls for Yahoo Live. So I'm glad her name was changed because she's obviously a not that smart a parent. I think that's like saying, I'm glad my child was raped, so she'll probably stay away from premarital sex forever. No, usually kids that are raped, usually if they don't address it, they usually act out sexually throughout their lives well into their adult years. You would think that if, somebody were raped, they would stay away from sex, but usually that's not the case. They usually are more perceptive to more sexual encounters, like I said, well into their adult life. So I wouldn't have thought, oh, my child got high out of their mind, they're probably going to stay away from weed forever. Usually anybody who's smoked their first experience with weed is usually pretty intense. It's not like I know when my first few times smoking, I couldn't smoke and go anywhere because I was extremely high. I was loopy. I was out of my mind. I was paranoid. I was giggling uncontrollably. It was pretty intense, but I'm not like, oh, that's so intense that I'm never going to smoke again. I just smoked enough to eventually I got used to smoking. But anyway, she said she's happy she had that, so she might stay away from drugs forever, says the dumb parent. Instead, the teen switched to smoking weed and vaping THC oil as frequently as 4 times a day, which is a lot, 14. Her mom discerned through snooping. That led through snooping, why am I snooping? Anyway, that led to a scary bout with chronic vomiting of cannabis, hyperemesis syndrome, also CHS, and made her withdrawn and defiant. Well, she was already defiant before she smoked the weed, because if she's smoking 4 times a day, she's already defiant. But anyway, now 17, she was recently caught smoking pot in the bathroom of her private school. It got her suspended, put on probation, and was made subject to random drug testing, which, if she fails, will mean mandatory medical leave for inpatient rehab and possible expulsion before her senior year. Meanwhile, her parents have employed a team of pricey experts, including a psychopharmacologist, that's my first time hearing that before, an addiction specialist therapist, and a family therapist. So is that 3 different therapists? So obviously they have a lot of money. The child has 3 therapists, or maybe the psychopharmacologist is a combination of an addiction specialist therapist, or anyway. They obviously are a well-off family to be able to afford that. She says, right now it's pretty bleak, admits Naomi, who believes the current situation is due to a collision of temperament and substance, all kicked off by that first alluring edible. I'm sure. I think it seemed less scary to her somehow, she says. It looked legit and like a product. As opposed to drugs, it gave her a false sense of security. Her daughter is far from alone, including when it comes to why she uses cannabis, which is to calm her anxiety. The reason given by 52.9% of teen users, according to a recent study. Now, on this channel, I hate when people say anxiety because, again, that's like an extremely big trigger word now, and people feel like that's a reason to smoke weed all day. When anxiety is like breathing air. We all have anxiety, and actually very few people have crippling anxiety, which that may cause for some sort of medication. And usually probably not weed, because it'll probably make, if you have crippling anxiety, weed probably would make it worse. And what I mean crippling is, you feel like that the streets are dangerous and you get so paranoid, you get so much anxiety by going to the grocery store. So in turn, you never leave your house because you're driven by so much anxiety. That's crippling anxiety. Because I feel anxious about a test, or I'm sad about a breakup, or I feel bad because I can't get a new pair of shoes, or all these normal things that just comes with life. There's no reason to, every time I feel anxiety about something, I need to smoke a blunt. That's usually just an excuse for us to get high. And weed does not cure anxiety. It just temporarily numbs you from thinking about what's ever giving you that anxiety. Once the high comes down, we still have to address why we felt that anxiety. If we don't, then we'll just get it back, and then we're into the cycle of smoking weed all day, every day. So it says, across the board, teen cannabis abuse has increased dramatically, up to 245% over the past 20 years, according to one study, with some experts attributing the rise of the widespread availability of edibles. While cannabis is legal only for adults, the study researchers found that edibles have made the drug more accessible to adolescents and fostered a perception that the drug is totally safe. Edibles are marked in ways that are attractive to young people, and they are considered more discreet and more convenient. The study lead author said, indeed, a recent survey on youth and cannabis found that teens view edibles as being less risky than smoking joints or blunts or vaping THC. And I can definitely see that. I've never thought of, we do know that edibles are more common now than what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I really never thought about the idea that it being more accessible or more alluring to smaller children, because in most cases they're in candy or in a brownie, which I can seem more harmless than a joint or blunt, which you have to actually smoke for that. And of course, we know anytime you're smoking anything, it's not good for a long term. So of course, ingesting cannabis, whether it's edible or in pill form, is probably more healthy than smoking it. But at the same time, like the article said, I think that we would probably give more leeway for kids to feel more comfortable with using weed because, it's in a cookie or it's in a candy bar. So it says, but compared to the immediate high of smoking weed, the high from edibles can take several hours, leading some impatient teens to take more of them and causing intense and unpredictable highs. I do agree. I've done edibles in my life, but I always prefer to smoke. But I did a couple in high school, and I think it was with just some not good weed because I didn't get an extreme high from it. But in my adult life, I had a few, and I do agree they are very intense. But like the article said, it takes a while for it to actually take effect. So teens who don't know this, I can definitely see them saying, oh, it's 30 minutes or it's 45 minutes or it's an hour. Because I know when I took my first edible in my adult years, it took about 45 minutes to an hour to actually achieve a high. But when it did kick in, it was definitely more intense than me smoking a blunt. So yeah, and I think paranoia, which I'm not a paranoid person. Weed doesn't usually make me paranoid, but I will say on edibles, the paranoid aspect was quite intense. I was very fidgety, very, very, very paranoid, more so than what I was if I was smoking. So it says, it's why headlines about teens being rushed to the ER after overindulging in the middle of their school day, something that they can easily do without detection, seems to come at a constant clip, with cities including Boston, Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, and suburban schools in Ohio, Indiana, New York, and other states reporting kids getting sick, passing out, and having seizures after ingesting a high-dose THC edible. And of course, yeah, like you smoking a joint in the bathroom or going to your car, I mean, it leaves a smell. You can physically be caught doing it. It is more risky smoking in a school. But, just putting a cookie in your backpack, putting a gummy, putting a chocolate bar, like, who's going to know you're getting high? So, of course, this is going to be more inclusive to children or more tempting for teens or younger adults to indulge in getting high. So it says, if you are using a gummy in school, it's hard to catch you. So they said that too. Bunny Halpern Fisher, youth risk behavior expert and professor at pediatrics of the Stanford School of Medicine, tells Yahoo Life about why kids are being so brazen. They're super easy to hide. They're feeling less vulnerable to getting caught. In fact, a 2017 focus group study on cannabis edibles and teens revealed they opted for edibles primarily to reduce the likelihood of getting caught. Makes sense. I've been arrested once in high school, and I've had a brush-in with the law a couple times by smoking. Of course, when you smoke, you can get caught smoking. After you smoke, the smell is still in the car. Of course, when you're rolling, you have weed residue still in your car. So there's all these different variables that is more easier for you to get arrested or get caught if you're trying to hide it versus, again, just eating a block of chocolate or a cookie. Who can tell? He said, plus, with expanding legality, edibles are ubiquitous. Interesting word. Harbin Fisher, creator of the widely used Cannabis Awareness and Prevention Toolkit, says they're everywhere right now. To wit, a national survey of teens from 2014 found that in states that had legalized medical marijuana, 40% of 12th graders who reported using marijuana in the past year said they had consumed edibles, compared to 26% in states without legalized marijuana. So although that you could be in a state that it's illegal, it's still easier for you to get control of it or hold of it because it's in cookie form. So it says, although edibles are still least common THC delivery method after smoking and vaping, according to some of the Halpern Fisher's unpublished data. They are preferred by 10 to 30% of users, depending on age. So it's not nothing, she says. And she fears that it will only increase. Young people think that to self-medicate with weed is a way to reduce their stress. But that is not actually true. Actually, what it often does is make you feel more stressed because you want more of it, especially if you're addicted. So, yeah, like I said, we like to self-medicate because we say it's about stress. We're living life. We're going to have stress. We're going to have anxiety. We're going to have bouts of depression about certain things. That's normal. That comes with life. But that's not a reason for us to get high every 5 seconds. It's not going to cure it. The more we do it, we're just going to actually more so just develop a weed addiction versus curing our anxiety, our stress, or whatever we're going through if we're not dealing with that head on. So he said, what makes ingesting cannabis different from smoking it? The science behind edibles, says Dr. Travis Fahrenkamp, psychiatrist at the Halsted and Betty Ford Center for Teens, Young Adults, and Families, has to do with how the body metabolizes the psychoactive substance THC, or Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. When cannabis is smoked, that gets delivered into the lungs and right into the bloodstream, he explains. When edibles are ingested, they go into the GI tract, they get into the bloodstream, and they go into what's called first pass metabolism, which means they're metabolized by the liver. And that doesn't seem that healthy either. But that process, he says, forms an additional psychoactive metabolite called 11-OH-THC, which can be even more potent and appear in the blood at higher quantities. That's where not only do you get a longer duration of the high, Fahrenkamp says, sometimes you get a more psychoactive effect depending on the dose that you're taking. And I do agree, although it takes longer for you to get high in an edible, once you do get high, it's much more intense than actually, much more intense than you smoking. And again, if you are taking more because you feel like, well, I want to get higher faster, or it's taking too long, before you know what, you eating a cookie and a half, or I would say a pack of cookies is like smoking 6 or 7 blunts, and you don't know it until 2 hours later. So it also says here why it's so easy to take too much. They said, while you may not be able to overdose and die as you could with, say, opioids, there are plenty of risks with ingesting THC, Fahrenkamp warns. The first risk, which is taking way too much to begin with. A lot of times these edibles either come in a package of multiple cookies in like a large candy bar, he says. They can put as much THC in that as they want. But then just identify the serving size differently. With the large chocolate bar, for example, the packaging might say it contains a total of 5 servings of 10 milligrams each. Or a package of 6 cookies might contain 10 milligrams per cookie. And teens, not necessarily known for carefully reading labels, might consume the entire package. Actually, most adults might consume the entire package. But as with one tragic incident from several years ago, a 19-year-old died after eating an entire large cookie containing 6 servings of THC and jumping from a building. Now, if the weed made you jump from a building, you probably had some issues before you smoked the weed, and he probably shouldn't have been taking weed in the first place, because weed should not make you jump from a building, unless you probably already have schizophrenic issues going on in your mind that you're not aware of, or maybe you are, but yeah, weed should not make you jump from a building. Another factor with taking too much, Fahrenkamp explains, is that the high of edibles not only lasts longer than of smoking, up to 12 hours more compared to about 4 hours. It also takes longer to kick in. So while smoking takes effect immediately and peaks about 20 or 30 minutes, edibles take about an hour or longer to get you high, peaking around the 2 to 4 hour mark. So let's say you're waiting 30 minutes, and you're like, oh, I don't feel anything, maybe I need to take more. And then they take more and more, and then it starts hitting them, and then they've already taken too much, he explains. And then the fact that edibles are typically in the form of tempting, colorful sweets and easy to understand why people are overdosing it. I mean, give me a bag of M&Ms or gummies, not with cannabis, but that's what any sweet says, Harpen Fleischer. You're popping it. It's hard not to. It's easy if it's tasty, because, one thing about, you're smoking versus eating a bag of candy or eating a brownie. I know the one I tried years back, it was like a red velvet cookie, a strawberry brownie, and a regular brownie. The person who prepared them, they were quite tasty. I mean, they tasted good. So, if something tastes good and you got a pack of them, it's easy to say, I'm going to eat this not because it tastes good and it's getting me high. It's quite easy to overdose when it's in the form of a tasty treat. Saying that we already have issues with eating too many sweets, too much sugar. It's like you're combining two vices into one. So, yeah. So there's risk of overdosing. They said negative reactions may start with the person first freaking out or having high levels of anxiety, says Fahrenkamp. Other possible effects: an altered perception of reality, disorientation, panicking, or feeling paranoid at the point of hallucinations or delusions, poor coordination, chronic vomiting in the form of CHS, or excessive sleepiness with brief amounts of not breathing. Then there are secondary effects, he says, with teens putting themselves into unsafe situations such as driving while high or walking into traffic. When kids who take too much cannabis are rushed to the hospital, it's typically to have their symptoms managed with medications, although people with a higher risk of anxiety, substance use disorders, or psychosis because of a family history can experience anxiety or paranoia that's much longer lasting, he says. So if you already have paranoid schizophrenia, or you have a deep issue with anxiety, I think weed only cures regular anxiety. If you have crippling anxiety, it's only going to make it worse, especially with edibles. So he says, and contrary to popular belief, especially for parents who grew up in the 80s or earlier, one can become addicted to cannabis, says Fahrenkamp. That's because the drug has a similar reward pathway as other substances of abuse, providing plenty of opportunity for people's brains, especially adolescents, which brains are still developing, to become more addicted, resulting in cannabis use disorder. And also when teens are taking these doses that are pretty high in form of edibles, they say it makes a difference if you start smoking weed or start using weed in your teen years, while your brain, although it's highly developed, is still forming. So you are more likely to be addicted if you start smoking at, say, 14, 16, 17, versus trying weed when you're 25. And it says, for kids already struggling with psychiatric issues, including anxiety and depression, these problems can become exacerbated. And a teen with a family of history, psychological disorders, especially schizophrenia or bipolar psychosis, will become more apt to develop them with cannabis use. Long-term effects of such abuse, he adds, can be impaired memory and concentration, as well as changes in the brain development and cognitive decline, including a lowered IQ, which makes you dumb, that can be sometimes permanent. And we'll soon know even more as a landmark longitudinal study that is currently underway at the National Institute of Mental Health Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study of a nearly 12,000 youths, looking at the factors including drug use. For now, parents like Naomi are witnessing effects firsthand. Once she ate the gummies and she got that high, she didn't like it, she says, for her daughter, but she didn't hate it so much that it kept her from using it again. No shit, Naomi. So What do you guys feel like this? Do you feel like that cannabis is picking up in teens because it's in the form of edibles that can't be detected? You can eat it, and people not know, and you're at school, you're high out your mind. I feel like this is an issue for our youth. What do you feel? Like, subscribe, to share. Most importantly, comment below and let me know how you feel about this article. Remember, guys, we are all in this together. Bye.